Hello everyone! Today we are going to complete my watercolor crayon review. I have had a pile of watercolor crayons to swatch and review and play around with, and I'm finally getting to them all. And now we are on the last set, which is the one by Sargent Arts. Now, the two that I've also done in the last month were smaller sets, and one of them was made for children, and I was hoping it would work for adults, but it did not. But this is marketed for adults, and you actually get 36 colors. Now it does come plastic wrapped, and I'm going to warn you, after you take that wrap off, this box is pretty much useless. Like, the lid constantly pops off because it doesn't even fit on there. So my crayons kept going like all over the place. So I'm gonna have to find a different place to store these, but it says watercolor crayons, finest pigment and raw materials. It don't tell us what it's made out of, but nothing on the back. I think it's on the inside cover. So pop it open. Here are your crayons. These look a lot like the Staedtler ones. Like, you see that? Aside from the wrapping, I'm talking crayon shape. Like, check that out. They even have like the same way they did the ending a little there. I just had like deja vu when I opened them the other day. I was like, wait, did I just review these? No, I didn't. All right, so the crayon itself will have finest water soluble crayon pastel. Well, we'll be the judge of that, won't we? Just kidding. Has the color on it. It does have a number, but as far as I know, these are not available open stock. So the number is just more for them. They're tracking. On the inside cover, there is this little styrofoam thing that protects the crayons, but on the inside cover, you have the list of colors. Now, I'm so glad they had this, because mine, because this lid doesn't even hold, strong, these all got like warped and changed out of order. So when I go to swatch them, I'm gonna have to be very careful and make sure, because I used this to put them in color order, or the order that they came in. So, like most of my reviews, what we'll be doing today is doing the swatching phase first. Of course, I will be using, again, my Princeton Aqua Elite round size 8 brush, just to not use the water brush. And then I will also test it out on, we'll be doing, let me get a color you can see. So as it's sped up, you'll only be seeing, me swatch and activate them, but I'll be doing a dry. Oh, I'm kind of worried, because these are just as hard and scratchy as the Staedtler ones, and they look awfully alike, so let's hope better results. But I'm going to zoom you in. So yeah, I'll do like a little dry swatch here. Let's make it a little larger. Oh, these are really scratchy. And then I'm going to do one up top here that'll be activated. Oh, this is rough. I'm like, come on. And then I will be putting it on my palette as well, and taking it from the palette and doing a little swatch below, just so you guys can see and like what you're looking at. So, oops, that sleeve is falling right off. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to speed this up, enjoy the music. You can either fast forward through it or watch it. I kind of suggest watching the swatching. Wow, I didn't realize that was gonna rhyme like that, but I do suggest watching it, because it's kind of good to get an idea of how the color activates with the water. And I do try to zoom in enough so you can see the activation. And I am filming in 8K, but unfortunately YouTube doesn't support 8K. Hopefully one day they do, so I can update all my videos to 8K. Hint, hint. But I am filming at the highest resolution possible, just so you can get that good view of it. So I'm going to start swatching, and then we will come back and we will test it on my Etcher Cold Press 100% cotton sketchbook, as well as my Fabriano watercolor paper. Now this is not cotton, but it is cold pressed, just to give us two different types. I don't have hot press because I don't use hot press. But this is Neenah 110 pound cardstock. that I like to use, and it kind of gives me a feel for how they're going to react, say, if I put them in an adult coloring book. All right, let's get going. Okay, so some of these, like since they were feeling like the Staedtler ones when I was putting them down, I was kind of worried they were going to perform like the Staedtler. Now, in some parts they did, in some parts they didn't, but if you're comparing these to the Staedtler, they dissolved a lot better right on the paper. That said, quite a few, I've noticed this salmon pink between the last few budget ones I've done is, and ochre, between Faber-Castells and Stedler and this one. It's really, they're both kind of eh. But the salmon pink from Sargent Arts actually dissolved, whereas the other ones didn't. So this gray rose color, you know, didn't really dissolve. And even then, I'm like, that color's kind of meh. I mean, I could just water down my violet and get that. So I was just kind of like, well, okay. Yeah, and then I noticed my greens really did not dissolve whatsoever. This sky blue, like, hi there, still there, did not dissolve at all. Like, I basically was just pulling some off, but leaving it. And I didn't press hard on any of these. I used light pressure. However, because these crayons themselves are so hard, I mean, they leave dust even when you're just lightly going across. I wonder if the hardness of the crayon is scratching the paper and leaving its pigment there. Just something I've noticed, because they were very hard. But overall, like, color selection wise, it's not bad. I think they went a little overboard on the yellows. This is a 36 count set. Give me something else. I don't know. Give me like, we already got a cool and a warm yellow, so I don't know. I just feel like that was a little bit of waste of space. This scarlet I was not really impressed with whatsoever. And then even like some of these reds, I was just like, why? So yeah, I mean, the color choices are just okay, but nah. I do love these. I like all the greens though. We've got a good selection of greens, but they didn't dissolve on the paper itself. So let's try the Fabriano. So this is the Sargent Art ones that I had done just the other day. I'm gonna try this yellow green. Since greens weren't dissolving on the cardstock, I want to see how they do on here. Cadmium green. And then I want to try that sky blue, because that one just did not dissolve on cardstock. Let's see how these look on this. Now this is cold press, but not 100% cotton. We'll do 100% cotton in a minute. I'm using more water because this is watercolor paper. Yeah, that sky blue does not. So if you're going to use that, just plan on your lines staying there, so can't be sloppy. Now coming off the palette, it looks great, but let's see how they dissolve here. Okay, these are dissolving better, but not quite how I'd like, because I mean, I've got quite a bit of water on here. Now the yellow green dissolved, but it had done that already on my cardstock. However, the cadmium green, as you can see, left lines there, and it's leaving lines here. So even on this cold press watercolor paper with the ridges, it's not coming out. Now the color is really pretty though. It's just you would have to put it on a palette. Let's see if it does any better on, oops, camera. And you guys know me, I'm not gonna bother editing that out. Let's see if it does better on 100% cotton. Now, these were the Faber-Castell watercolor crayons. This was the Stedler. As you can see, there's still lines. We'll take that sky blue again, because that one was the one being a punk. And we'll do the same color combo again. So, I'll do this yellow-green here. Can you hear that scratch? Now, I'm not pressing hard at all, but you can just hear it. Ah, you can just hear that scratch. It's like, oh, it really tugs at me. And it's extra scratchy on this paper. All right, so let's try that sky blue. I'm gonna keep my brush really wet. Yep, it's not, I mean, you would, at this point, you're just like overworking it into the paper. So the color coming off is pretty, but you got your lines. All right, let's see how these, oops, took off a little too much water considering this is 100% cotton. So let's see. Yep, that one is still not dissolving all the way. It's still putting off great color, but it's kind of like, I wonder what it would look like if I didn't have to sit here and like overwork it, you know? But I mean, yeah, it's a pretty color. It's just kind of similar to the other two budget ones that I tried. Basically, if you're going to use these colors, they do reactivate off the palette. See, so I just reactivated that one. Because here they are on the palette. I get some more water on my brush. They'll reactivate because the shavings, like any other watercolor crayon, I'm just gonna mix it with both these greens because I don't have enough paint. So they'll reactivate, you know, and you can just doop. But I mean, overall, these are definitely going to be colors, again, like the other brands, that you end up doing off the palette because of the lines. Granted, there's some colors that are dissolving just fine here without leaving lines, but I mean, that's not something you want to like play around with. So obviously, if you buy this set, you'll want to swatch it yourself. I suggest if you're an adult colorist, swatching it on a cardstock or something similar to your coloring books, even swatching it in the back of a coloring book. You know, if you're an artist, I always recommend with watercolor, swatch in the book that you paint in. I use this Etcher cold press, 100% cotton for all my watercolor art. And I have a sketchbook in a smaller size, or swatch book, sorry, in a smaller size. And so I test all my watercolors there. I'm using my actual sketchbook to test these just because I wanted a whole page to play with. But like, so for me, from the watercolor artist side of me, I'd be like, okay, these are not going to dissolve, at least these colors. This green came out all right, but I would swatch them in here so I knew which ones were going to swatch or dissolve right off the bat versus which ones were not going to. But, you know, if I purchase watercolor crayons, and if you've been watching this series, this is going to sound like a repeating record, but I have to do this in case someone's just popping into this one and hasn't seen the others. I purchase watercolor crayons for convenience. I want to be able to, you know, draw my design on my page and, you know, do whatever it is I want to do with it. That's the whole reason I buy watercolor crayons. While I know some people purchase them for other reasons, this is why I buy them. I want to be able to draw it, and then I want to be able to activate it and do whatever I want. Like, come on! Like, if I want to make this heart, basically we're going to have the outline and then my watercolor. And I can just keep like screwing around with it if I want. Mix in the blue there if I want. But I don't want the line there. That's not why I'm buying them. I want to draw something, activate it, and turn it into something else. My Neo colors, my Lyras, all of those dissolve. Like, I don't have to worry about it. So that is something you want to keep in mind if you're using these for watercolor art. If you're okay with the lines there, then, you know, if that's the look you're going for, these will work. Now, in an adult coloring book, you may want to go to the back of whatever book you're working in, because all books have different paper. You're going to want to go to like the back or have a test page and try it out, those colors on that specific paper, and see if they dissolve, especially if you're using it as a base color or a background or something like that and you don't want the lines. Because as you can see, quite a few of these leave lines on cardstock, which means most likely they'll do the same on an adult coloring book. And then of course, they obviously will be doing that on 100% cotton. So if I were to swatch this, I would know that only like certain colors are going to dissolve on the page. And for the most part, I'll have to put them on my palette. And for me, that's just not worthwhile because that's not why I buy the crayons. But for those of you who buy the crayons to have a convenient watercolor without the pans and you just have a box ready to go, that works great. You'll just have to have some way to get the color onto a palette. So either a rough cutting board or the crayon dash palette like this works great. You could even say you want like a little mini palette on the go. You can take your crayon dash palette or any other brand for that matter. You know, get all the colors you want in nice little circles on the palette and take it on the go with you. And then of course it just keeps reactivating, but remember, you're not going to have as much paint as you would just buying a half pan of a paint. And that brings me to the last point. These don't have the same light fast rating and, you know, pigment information as the more artist grade ones would. So for me, if I was to use these like watercolors, well, I would just go buy watercolors or use my watercolors that I have, because those have the pigment numbers. I know what pigments are actually creating those paints. And then of course, you know, I know the brand and the light fast ratings, whereas these are like completely in the dark. But that's just my opinion on the art side of things. If you're doing this solely for adult coloring and you want a nice, affordable watercolor option for like backgrounds, these are very pretty if you activate them on the palette. I mean, look at the colors, very pretty. So that's just something to keep in mind. One girl's opinion. But that is it for all of my watercolor crayon reviews. I think if there is a brand of crayon you have not seen, let me know. I will be doing a final video showing my ranking of the crayons that I have featured in these reviews and whatnot. Now again, it is, you know, still going to have an opinion. There's no way to get around that. We all are unique in how we use and perceive our art supplies. So I try to keep it as neutral as possible, but in my rankings, however, you know, there's only, I obviously have to share an opinion somewhere because otherwise what's the point of watching it, right? But yep, so I will do a ranking video after I kind of compare all my notes and put them together. Now, watercolor crayons, watercolor pastel crayons, you know, it's kind of like one of those funny situations where you have different names and some are pastels, some are not, but basically I'm going to be comparing anything that is a water-soluble crayon. Otherwise, if I, you know, start piecemealing them out by pastel and oil pastel that's also water-soluble, or versus one that just says watercolor crayon, that's going to get tedious, and the girl just doesn't have time for that. Basically, if it's a water-soluble crayon, we're going to rank them. So look out for that video soon. And until next time, take care. Bye now.